The night before my wedding, I sat alone in a bathroom stall, still in my rehearsal dress, and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't nervous about getting married. I was nervous because I already knew the man waiting for me at that altar didn't love me. He loved what I was worth. I had the proof. Before I tell you what happened next, drop your country in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story hits you, tap like. It helps more than you know. Now let me take you back to where this all began. My name is Sarah Mitchell. By 32, I had built a company from nothing. Not inherited wealth. Not a family name. Just 10 years of 18-hour days, failed deals, borrowed offices, and a stubbornness that refused to quit. I am a self-made woman. But here's the thing nobody tells you about success. It makes people look at you differently, not with respect, with calculation. You start to see it in their eyes. Quick flicker, like a cash register ringing. I built walls. Quiet, invisible walls. I stopped trusting easily. Until my mother called me one evening and said 4 words that changed everything. I found someone for you. His name was Ryan, and I will admit the first time I saw him, I understood why she chose him. He was the kind of man who walked into a room and owned it, without trying. Confident. Articulate. He asked good questions and listened carefully, and laughed at the right moments. On paper, he was everything. But here's what I learned about people like Ryan. Paper is their natural habitat. The real version only shows up when the stakes change. I felt it slowly, then all at once. The way every conversation looped back to money, not casually, specifically. How liquid are your assets? You control the shares, or does the board? What happens to the company if you marry? He asked these questions like a lawyer, not a lover. One evening I tested something small. I mentioned, completely casually, that I sometimes dreamed about giving it all up. A quiet life. A small house. Just peace. He smiled, then said, "That's a beautiful thought. But practically speaking, you'd be wasting everything you built." Practically speaking. That phrase sat in my chest like a stone. That night I made a decision. I was going to show him a version of me with nothing, and I was going to watch what he did next. The next morning I sat across from him at breakfast and said it calmly. "Ryan, I need to tell you something. The company, it's not technically mine. My father restructured the assets last year. After the marriage, everything transfers to my brother. I walk away with nothing. Silence." He set his coffee cup down, very carefully. For exactly 3 seconds, his face went completely blank. Then the mask came back. "That's okay," he said. "Not with you for your money." He even smiled, but his eyes didn't smile with him. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Ryan dissolve. It didn't happen dramatically. It happened in the spaces between conversations. The dinner invitations became less frequent. His phone calls got shorter. When we were together, he was distracted, his mind somewhere I wasn't invited. Then the suggestions started. "You should fight for your share. It's your right. Talk to a lawyer, Sarah. Before the marriage, just to protect yourself. If your brother takes everything, what does that mean for us?" That last sentence. What does that mean for us? It's not what does it mean for me. Not are you okay? For us. For the arrangement, the calculation he had built around my net worth, I said nothing. I just watched. I first noticed Jake at a dinner between our families. He was Ryan's closest friend, and he sat at the far end of the table, quieter than everyone else. He didn't try to impress anyone. He didn't fill silences with clever remarks or turn conversations toward himself. He just listened. The first time we actually spoke was by accident. I had stepped outside for air and he was already there, standing by the railing, looking out at the city. I said something about the view. He said, "I come out here when the room gets too loud." And something about that, the honesty of it, made me relax in a way I hadn't in weeks. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. Books, bad coffee. The way cities look better at night because the darkness hides all the unfinished parts. When I went back inside, I realized something that unsettled me. That was the first real conversation I had in months. I started noticing the gap between them everywhere. Ryan talked about the future like a business plan. Jake talked about it like it was something that would simply arrive and he would meet it honestly. Ryan asked me questions about assets. Jake asked me what I actually enjoyed. Not my company. Not my portfolio. Me. Once in front of both of them, Ryan said something cutting without realizing it. He implied casually that I should reconsider my financial position before the wedding. Jake looked at him, just looked, then said quietly, "She already told you what she wants." The table went silent. Ryan laughed it off, but I saw something flicker behind his eyes, annoyance. The kind that only comes when someone says something true. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in that bathroom. I had run through every possibility, every outcome, every version of what tomorrow could look like. I kept arriving at the same place. I was about to marry a man who had never once, not in weeks of knowing me, asked me if I was happy. Not once. I thought about Jake, about the way he listened, the way he didn't push or pressure or calculate, the way he made silence feel safe instead of suspicious. And I thought, I am making a terrible mistake, but I was too far in to stop. Or so I thought. The ceremony was beautiful. Lights strung like stars across the hall. Flowers I had spent weeks choosing. 100 people dressed in their finest, faces bright and expectant. And Ryan at the front, composed, confident, perfect. I walked toward him and I looked into his eyes and I searched for something. Warmth? Recognition? Even just presence. What I found was relief. The kind a man feels when a deal finally closes, and then everything fell apart. He raised his hand. The music cut. The room held its breath. "Before we continue," he said, his voice steady and loud enough for the entire hall, "I need to say something." My father stiffened beside me. "I was told," Ryan said, "that this woman built her own wealth, that she was independent, successful." He paused. "But I've since learned the truth. She has nothing. The company was never hers." A wave of murmurs rippled through the guests. "I cannot," he said, his voice dropping into something cold, "build a future with someone who brought nothing to the table." Gasps, whispers. Someone laughed. I stood completely still, not because I was broken, because I had already been through this in my mind 100 times. I knew exactly how this story ended. Enough. The word wasn't loud, but it cut through the entire room. Jake had stood up from his seat. He wasn't angry. He was something quieter. Than that, something more dangerous. "You don't talk about her like that," he said to Ryan. "Not here. Not anywhere." Ryan turned, surprised. "Stay out of this." "No." Jake walked forward. Calm, certain. "What you're doing right now is shameful, and you know it." The crowd was completely silent. Ryan, trying to recover, spread his hands and laughed. "If you care so much, then you marry her." He meant it as a joke, a dismissal, a way to end. Jake didn't laugh. He looked at me, not with pity, not with performance, with something I can only describe as recognition. Like he had been waiting for this moment without knowing it. "I won't let this be the story people tell about you," he said quietly. And then he said, "If you'll have me, I will stand. With you, right now, today." I walked to the center of the room, took a breath, and then I turned to Ryan and I said, "Clearly, for every person in that hall to hear, you're right." I lied. The room stirred. "I told you I had nothing. I wanted to know what you would do." I paused. "Now I know." His expression flickered. Confusion, then dread. "My father didn't build anything," I continued. "I did. Every contract, every client, every sleepless night. It was mine. It is mine. There is no brother. There was never a transfer." The silence was absolute. "I wasn't looking for the richest man in this room," I said. "I was looking for the realest one." I turned away from him. I walked toward Jake. "You stood," I said, "when everyone else stayed seated. Not because of what I own." I looked at him. "It's because of who I am." He looked back at me with steady eyes. "I think," I said softly, "you've known me longer than he ever did." That day, not the wedding I planned, not the man my mother chose, but the truest thing I have ever done. Ryan left the hall without another word. His family followed, quietly, The way people leave when they know they've lost something they don't deserve to win back. And in the middle of the lights and the flowers and the 100 people who had come to watch a different story began. That night, my husband, a word I still said slowly, like something I wanted to taste, looked at me and said, "I never cared what you were worth, Sarah." I smiled. "I know," I said. "That's the only reason I said yes. The right person will never make you feel like a transaction. It will make you feel like a choice." If this story stayed with you, tell me why in the comments, and tell me your country. I want to know who's listening. Like this video if you believe in this. And subscribe, because next week, I have a story that will hit even harder. I'll see you there.